Hey everyone, welcome to Cross-Gen something. I don't know what we're going to call this series
Cross-gen,
exactly.
yeah. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But in this one, normally we record on Thursdays, and currently there's a hurricane bearing its way directly at me, so we're not going to be able to do that. But we wanted to have an opportunity to actually talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake, so we figured, why not just take the time now and discuss it, since Dylan here has finally jumped in and experienced the amazingness that is Final Fantasy, as well as not even just Final Fantasy Remake.
It's just Final Fantasy. It's literally the first thing I've ever experienced of Final Fantasy, just head on.
And since, we are cross-gen gaming, we want to kind of experience things from two different generations. This is a great game to do that with. Since I have a lot of history with Final Fantasy, he has zero. So we're going to get into it a little bit. But before we do that, be sure to give this video a like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell to see all of our new videos when they come out. Make sure you hit all. I've had some people who are like, oh, I hit it, nothing happened. If you want to see everything, hit all. Personalized works too. Just don't have it off. That's rude.
YouTube likes to complicate things. But hey, we're here to help.
Also, before we jump in, we're going to get very, very deep into spoilers.
Oh, yes.
This is a spoiler-heavy warning.
Uh-huh.
If, geez, I can't express to you how many spoilers are going to be in this.
It's going to be all over the place, so you have been warned.
Spoilers for Final Fantasy VII, spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Remake, spoilers for Crisis Core, spoilers for other games. I don't know which ones exactly.
Everything.
There's going to be spoilers here, so just be aware. Be prepared. So Dylan, we mentioned kind of at the beginning there that you don't really have any experience with Final Fantasy. So before we jump into stuff here, what I thought it'd be cool for us to kind of talk about our experiences with Final Fantasy as a franchise, and maybe a little bit more specifically Final Fantasy VII for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, this is the first thing on Final Fantasy that I've played or experienced or whatever. Obviously, I know what it is. I'm a gamer. I know what's up. So
I game.
I've heard of it. I know about it, and I especially know about Final Fantasy VII, one of the most popular games of all time. So, going into this, I had experience. I don't know if you necessarily want to call it that, but I knew what was up. I knew Aerith died. I knew who Sephiroth was.
We told you spoilers.
I told you. You watch out. So yeah, I knew what most gamers knew, but never experienced it. Not any Final Fantasy. Nothing.
So what was your perspective on the franchise just kind of as a whole? You said you haven't had any actual experience with it, but were the people who were just telling you over and over again, hey, you need to play Final Fantasy VII, you need to play Final Fantasy VII, you need to play Final Fantasy VII. Did you feel annoyed by it? Were you just hesitant to jump in just because it's a JRPG series? You get what I'm asking here?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's more so I just never really cared enough. I wasn't, for a while, I never really was into JRPGs, not even really just regular RPGs.
Right.
So that was never necessarily something that kind of came across my mind. I never had a crazy desire to, because for the original game, it's just looking back on it, I mean, on my age, I just laugh because it looks silly. I know the graphics were crazy and it's super high end for the time, but especially just the regular open world sections, just look at those little figures walking around. It's so funny. But yeah, I never really specifically was ew, I would never play this game, yuck. It was more so yeah, it's there. And mostly for Final Fantasy as a whole, it was just that's the JRPG series, the JRPG series, which could be debated, but that's how I saw it.
For the West, it certainly is.
Yeah, and it's just, I wasn't a JRPG guy, so I didn't really care.
So what was your first RPG? You mentioned JRPG. I think I know that your first JRPG was Persona 5, which is going to make several people here absolutely die inside. With you've picked the best, one of the best ones ever. It's going to ruin your experience for all of them. No, it is. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. It's just you're going to have such a skewed perspective going forward of oh man, well, Persona 5 did it better. It's well, yeah, but Persona 5 is a 1 in a million game. That's not really fair.
Gosh, what was my first RPG? Man, You're making me do this on the spot thing that I'm never good at. You know what? Well, actually, duh. I actually feel stupid. Pokemon.
Pokemon is absolutely 100% is an RPG.
Yeah, it's an RPG. Pokemon for sure. I was a kid into that sort of nerdy gaming stuff. Of course, Pokemon was gonna come up. My generation was the Diamond and Pearl generation. So
holy crap.
Yeah.
I'm an actual dinosaur.
I'm not a big Pokemon fan, but that was definitely the first. I played the crap out of Diamond, and then I played Fire Red on my phone through legal means when I was younger.
Backups.
Through totally legal backups. But yeah, so that's the answer is is Pokemon. So
that makes total sense.
But that's like the normie one, you know. So I didn't go much further than that.
You'd be surprised, man. Like there's a lot of people who are like, I've never played an RPG. Oh, but I have played Pokemon. So I guess
that's
it is
how
kind
it
of
feels
normie,
like
but
for me. I mean, come on, man. Pokemon's the most profitable franchise. One of the most profitable franchises in the world. So yeah. So basically, even outside of JRPGs, not the biggest RPG guy. Pretty standard. Again, I'm in the gaming know-how. I'm in the spheres. I know what's up. So I knew what an RPG was. I knew what to expect. Like I had the feelings, you know.
You just never had the desire to really jump into an RPG.
No,
really,
it was
past
never,
Pokemon.
It was never. There was nothing crazily drawing me in. It was always kind of like I'd have to stumble in to even care first. Because I mean, like, just talking about now, I remember that I played when I was younger, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days.
Woo, baby!
Yeah, I know, and that was like the sort of thing that got me into Kingdom Hearts, and
right.
So that's how most things were for me, where I just kind of fell in, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this, which is already how it's starting with JRPGs, where I play Persona 5, like, oh, I kind of like this.
Well, and for me, it's kind of similar, but it's from a different era where
I'm sure
we did. Well, yeah, obviously, but we didn't really have access to a lot of video games when I was growing up. We had rental stores, and so
relic of the past.
The reason that I got into RPGs in general was because my mom took me to a rental store, and she asked, "Hey, what's a game that he can play the entire weekend?" And they picked a Final Fantasy game.
Oh boy.
And it happened to be Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which is actually a perfect beginner RPG. That game gets a lot of hate. It's technically part of the Final Fantasy franchise, but it was I think the first Final Fantasy game that Europe got, which is kind of a slap in the face because it's not like it is an RPG, like a JRPG. There's turn-based stuff, but it is not on the same level as the other ones.
Yeah, I have no idea what that even is. I've never heard of that before. Mystic Quest.
It's like a weird offshoot. It's the same basic story of like you gotta go find crystals and stop the world from ending or blah blah blah.
Kill a god at the end. Yeah.
You can kill a god, use cure on him, and he just dies immediately. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was my first one, and then from there I kind of jumped into some other ones. Played Chrono Trigger a little bit. I didn't dig Chrono Trigger. I think I played it just a smidge too early. But Super Mario RPG was like my absolute jam. Paper Mario is so good. You would like Paper Mario. You need to go back and play Paper Mario. So what made you want to jump into Remake then? Since you said you've never really played RPGs really or JRPGs, what about Remake kind of drew you in, other than me badgering you to play the game?
Well,
ignore that part of it.
Of course,
not relevant.
That's assumed at this point. Well, really what it was is, I mean, first, like I said, Final Fantasy VII, one of the biggest games in gaming history. So I knew about it, and I definitely heard that, they're remaking it. That's pretty interesting. And I saw trailers here and there. I'm like, oh, it looks really cool. It looks really fun. And then what really kind of like got the ball rolling for me is they released the demo for
the demo was very helpful.
Yeah, the demo was, I installed it and was like, I'll give it a shot. And I played through like the whole thing. Like I think it just goes up to the boss fight of the bombing run, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I played all of that and I was like, oh, damn, this is good.
This game rules.
Like what really was the biggest thing for me was the combat, where I really felt like, okay, I suck at this, but I totally feel how I'm supposed to play and what I need to go for, and I would really like to just sink my teeth into it and and get like really proficient at it by the end.
You're saying you want to get good at the game.
Really, that's what it was. Is I could easily feel that the system was developed, and if I had given enough time, I could really enjoy it. So that honestly was the main draw. Like, because story-wise, it's, at the time I didn't really know much about it, and I knew enough where I was like, I don't really care about it. It was really just the combat at first. Then when I got into it, whoa.
The combat will really do it though. Like it's I know it was divisive when like it first released, but like the more I'm playing it, the more I played it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. And I want to go on a quick tangent here.
Oh boy,
we're gonna talk about gameplay stuff in a second, but
boy.
This is one of the things where I know that like I disagree with a lot of like actual traditional JRPG fans. I so much prefer action-based combat over turn-based combat.
I feel like we're getting there though. I feel like I've heard more and more discussions recently where it's like, yeah, turn-based is a bit overdone. Funny enough, the only people that I'm like, or the only game I hear people are okay with that is Persona 5, where like they did turn-based well.
Persona or Dragon Quest.
Really, I haven't heard Dragon Quest, but I don't hear much about Dragon Quest, so yeah. I definitely think it's kind of leading toward that, where people are getting tired of turn-based, more slower kind of gameplay and are much preferring actions.
I think most people are just really over random battles.
That too.
And like random battles are done. I don't care what anyone says. Random battles are over. They need to be gone. They are useless. I have never once played a game and said I prefer random battles to being able to see where the enemies are and run into them if I choose to. You can still do your cool grindy stuff. I love all that. That's great. But like at least the ability, like if you're going to do random battles, do the Bravely Default thing and like make it so you can turn them off.
Oh, really? I didn't know they did that.
Oh yeah, it made it so much more playable.
But yeah, I'm with you there. I would prefer, like, I like this more real time, I guess you would call it.
It was so satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, it's real good to. As I had thought, once I started playing more and more, I got into the gameplay and I got better at it, and I reached a point where I'm just like, oh, this feels so good. I'm just kicking ass. Because I knew I understood the mechanics and how to play it well and when to switch, when to govern, stuff like it was so nice.
It's just so well done and it's so balanced. And the thing that I liked so much about it is it gave me what I always wanted Final Fantasy XIII's combat to feel like. Mm-hmm. And again, I know you've not played Final Fantasy XIII, but for all those Final Fantasy XIII apologists like me out there, that game is not that bad, but the combat is really interesting, but there's some tweaks that they kind of fixed later on. But Final Fantasy VII Remake actually does the 13, like what 13 was trying to do in combat, perfectly.
Really?
It's so good. Yes, it's so good.
I believe
and like it's not even. I heard some people say like, oh, this is just an evolution of the Final Fantasy 15 battle system. Which, no, I mean it kind of is, but no. It is real, like genuinely, if you go look at the people who designed the battle system for 13 and the same people who did the battle system, or the people who made the battle system for 7 Remake, it's basically the same team. Really? Interestingly enough, it's basically the same team. Or there's a lot of crossover at least. So clearly they were onto something and they made it work. I love it.
Yeah, it really feels good.
But speaking about 7 specifically, 7 Remake, do you ever anticipate going back to the original one? You've mentioned before how like you're just kind of like, I'm good.
I'm not. I really don't think I will.
Why?
I just feel like it's too dated for me, and I'm personally content. I know, as we'll get into later, 7R and just regular 7 is different. If I'm pretty much content just kind of experiencing Final Fantasy VII this way as I am now, where I just play Remake and then Rebirth and so on and so forth, as opposed to going back and playing it. I've got enough video games on my plate that I get to slowly enough already. And
I'll give you that one.
And and going to a huge game like Final Fantasy VII would just, I don't know. I don't think I would really enjoy it all that much, and I don't really have any great desire to play it. I know that it's kind of a cheap answer to say it's old, but at least for me that's kind of how it feels, especially when I've got Remake and all this right here.
Well, and especially considering, you've got your game, Destiny 2.
Of course.
And then you kind of fill in with any kind of Sonic that has come out.
Of course.
And then if there's time in between Sonic releases, then you add in stuff like 7 Remake and, maybe God of War next. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever go to the original Final Fantasy VII. I have no desire to at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Again, as an apologist for the first game, for Final Fantasy VII Remake, it is one of those things where I struggle to recommend it to people. All of my rating system is based on like how easy it is for me to recommend it to other people. And as much as I love Final Fantasy VII, the original game, I just can't recommend it to the majority of gamers. It's just not a game that most people will jive with. You are a perfect example of like you're playing a live service game.
True.
As your main thing. You're not going to take the time to jump through something that like it's good, but you have a better version.
Well, how long roughly would it take someone to beat Final Fantasy VII? Just beat. Play normally, do a little extra stuff, yada yada.
My guess is like 40 hours, just off the top of my head. I can look it up real quick, actually.
That's
yeah.
From all the, I guess, research that I've done after beating FF7R, I would have guessed it was like 80 because it feels packed. It feels it looks and seems packed.
Wait, are you saying from the perspective of playing 7R?
I mean, I'm just curious how long it took most people to beat the game. Because from like after I beat 7R, I've looked into the original, just found out like the story, what all this stuff meant, yada yada, and it looked like it was a huge, really long game.
No, it's about the same length. If you're playing just straight through, it's about the same length as this game.
That's crazy to me. It seems story-wise, it is packed to the brim.
I mean, there's a lot happening. Don't get it twisted here. And again, this comes from a different era when like people were like there wasn't as much availability. Like we didn't have Game Pass, or they didn't have the internet. We couldn't just download games instantly. And so typically the game that you had was the game that you had. And so if you look at beat times from back in the day, people were playing, and that was just the only game that they had. Yeah. So like, of course they're putting like 80, 90 hours into this game, but like, no, that's not required to beat it. To beat it's only like I think 36, 37.
Wow.
According to the how long to beat. But you'll end up doing a couple of extra stuff, a couple of extra things just by playing it. So
I'm sure, and I mean how I play games naturally it would take a lot longer, but
don't do the thing where you're trying to just get everything. That's
just
crazy.
How I play though.
But you make yourself miserable doing that. Don't do that.
Stop when I get miserable. Like I didn't do everything in FF7R, but I did a good amount because I didn't like I read that one Chadley mission where it was like master 10 materia. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I've barely done 2.
So we've talked about the battle systems a little bit and how you loved it compared to the only other JRPG that you have played being Persona. Give me your thoughts.
I mean, well, there really are very different types of types of battle systems, because like the thing I loved about Persona 5's battle system is that it was very tactful. Like I really liked strategizing, like, okay, based on all the things I'm facing, what is the best thing I can fight? What's the best move I can use? Should I heal? Should I not? Yada yada, all that stuff. It's very strategic because it's turn-based and there's a lot of smaller elements that you can use to like weaken someone or like.
It's kind of like Pokemon in that way.
Yeah. There's that.
There's a strategy behind actually pushing the button rather than just hitting the attack button over and over and over again.
Yes. Right. And I'd argue that more so in Persona, you have to really try, whereas Pokemon, it's kind of like, yeah. But yeah, so that's...
Pokemon's for kids. Persona really isn't. So like,
Yeah. So that's what I really liked about Persona 5's. And then the funny thing of FF7R is it's essentially kind of the opposite. Like you still have those weakness elements there where like I think I mean the important distinction between the two is obviously the first one's real time or FF7R is real time, then and unless you play at the specific difficulty, but even then still more real time, and you kind of have to think a lot quicker. Like there were, especially in the beginning, there were a lot of times where I was just like, I'll just use this move. I don't know if it's necessarily good or if it'll hurt me, whatever. I'm just going to use this move because I have the energy and I need to hurt the mans. Where even from the very beginning of Persona 5, I was like, all right, we're going to plan all this out. We're going to do this.
I have to use the ice attack on the fire monster or whatever,
exactly.
Because if I don't, then like I'm not going to actually get him in a state where I can do the most damage, and then I won't get an extra turn to fight someone else. Yep. Right? No, 100%.
Yes. There's that real big distinction, but I think both work for different reasons. I think
clearly
Persona 5 works because I think just that playing your cards right is so satisfying nearly every time. And it just feels, at least for me personally, because I love that kind of stuff. It just feels so good to be like, I defeated you. I beat you in every way possible. You barely even hurt me. And then with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I like to get that feeling, but it took so much longer to get to that point where it was only really by basically the tail end where I was like, I beat you. When the very beginning I was like, I barely made it out alive. So
right.
that was personally the appeal of FF7R, where I knew I could go into this system and really get better at it and clearly see myself get better at it.
Well, it was tough. It was kind of the same for me just because, coming from Final Fantasy VII, the original one, it is just strictly turn-based. Yes, there's active time battle systems the same way it was from, I believe, Final Fantasy IV through 9, actually. But it's just a different, seeing Cloud and Barrett do their thing in the bombing run, and it not being a turn-based slow battle against the thing with the giant laser tail and having to like actually move behind cover to not get hit by the laser tail, that was a big change for me. I think something that I've picked up on way later is that, yeah, it is faster paced, but it is only as much as faster paced as you want it to be. That's what I kind of ended up figuring out. Is like, I can just pause the game when I feel like it.
True.
Because I'm typically just, I build up the ATB for whoever I'm playing as currently, but my other characters are still doing that. So like, if I'm switching between Aerith and Barrett and Cloud, or Tifa and Barrett, whoever I'm playing as, being able to just on the fly kind of pause and take a breather and be like, okay, what's next? I'm talking about going into the command screen and having it be in like super slow mode, taking a breath and like assessing like, okay, I need to build up the ATB on Tifa first so that I can build up a stagger, then switch to Barrett to help increase the stagger, finish him off with the Cloud. It's big damage. Yeah. And so then I would just cycle through, pause again, figure out my next strategy. Like, okay, now he's going to attack, so I need to switch over here, stay away, blah, blah, blah. It kind of almost felt more like a CRPG to me, which is like really interesting. Do you know what CRPGs are?
I do not.
So it's computer RPG. So that's more of like, there's a kind of a big genre. It's like Pillars of Eternity and the original Fallout games, or what's another one? Planescape Torment, Baldur's Gate, that kind of stuff.
Saying a lot of words.
Fully over your head. It's like late 90s, early 2000s computer games, or like big, huge, enormous. Dragon Age Origins is another good example of like a more modern version of that. That like, it's also on console, but like the PC version played almost completely differently. It's really cool.
Interesting.
It's a whole different thing. Do not think you would like it.
Okay.
It's very story heavy.
Gotcha. I like story, but I have to be really invested into it.
You like story, but you don't like having to slog through a bunch of like menus to get to the story.
Not particularly, no.
Right.